Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
Welcome. This is the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Your host, Joey, the Italian Stallion Murray, joined as always by Russ, the idea guy, Morgan.
All right, Joey, I got a question for you now.
Oh, okay.
All right.
This is different. You're going to mix it up.
There's odd questions and conversations, maybe even taboo questions that you're not supposed to bring up around the family dinner table.
I'm not sure that anything's completely off the table, no pun intended. But I would say probably I'm going to steer clear of politics as much as possible.
Okay, well, that's very good because today's episode, we dove all into politics.
Yeah, so we're going to go against the grain today.
Well, and our guest today has a podcast, Wealth, Power, and Influence, where he literally dives into both politics and economics. And we don't go too deep into politics actually on this episode, but we skirt the edge on a few things. Yeah. There may be some feathers that get ruffled, and it makes me think of the Holderness family. You ever watched any of those videos?
Oh, I love their videos.
When they did the video, Welcome to My Couch.
I don't know if I've seen that one.
Well, you go watch that one, and it's really kind of this like fight between two family connections that come together for Thanksgiving, and one's a Trump fanatic and the other's a Hillary person.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. By the way, though, let's talk about our guest today, Jason Stapleton. What is he going to bring to the audience today?
First of all, with a podcast with that name, who doesn't want wealth, power, and influence? We talk about that, actually. We talk about how those things can sometimes be taboo, right, Russ? I mean, it shouldn't be that way, but we've been kind of manipulated to think that they're the villain, that wealth is bad, that power is always going to lead to corruption. And Jason had some really interesting things to say about that.
He did. If you really want to know how do you bring value to the table, how can you get to the next level, what is it that you're missing, and what should you be doing? This podcast is for you, as well as a little bit of off-color or maybe taboo conversation as it relates to the Murray household family dinner table.
Yeah, so let's not hold off any longer. Let's get to the point with Jason Stapleton. Dad, do you have to go to work today? If you're tired of having to answer yes to that question and you're ready to stop trading time for money, join Russ and I on this journey to financial freedom at community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com.
This is the place where you can take control. You can pick your own path and get there faster. Go to community.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com.
Welcome into the show. Today we have Jason Stapleton joining us. Jason, welcome to the show, man.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Man, this is going to be fun. You have a podcast, Wealth, Power, and Influence. And I believe that's what most of the people listening to you want, Jason. They want wealth, power, and influence.
I hope so. Yeah, no, it's funny because most people, most of the world will look at that and immediately have a negative reaction to it. And I wanted to do two things. Number one is I wanted to attract the people first and foremost who wanted those things. And then anybody else who might be listening to it, I want them to understand that if you are a person, a moral and ethical person, that you should want more of those things, and that here's how you get them. And so we spend a lot of time talking with people about current events and about economics and just anything and everything having to do with how to amass more wealth, power, and influence so we can try and put it in the hands of good people who are doing good things.
Well, and I want to dive into that part because I think what you have said that is that we want to control the source of our own income. We want to be one of those good guys who are out there rooting for those principles. Talk a little bit about that. So kind of give some backstory to the person who's listening for the first time, doesn't know who Jason Stapleton is, hasn't listened to your podcast, Wealth, Power, and Influence. What is it that you're about? What is it that being one of those good guys even looks like?
Okay. Well, I've got a very long and somewhat boring story that takes me from the Marine Corps into private contracting work overseas to becoming an entrepreneur and currency trader and building a very large and modestly successful a trading education company. And after that, I started a podcast designed to talk about politics and economics. But what I figured out really quickly actually took me longer than I hoped. But what I found out was that I was attracting the wrong kinds of people in the sense that I'm a very free market type of person, very libertarian, if you will, in the way I view the world. Both my life philosophy, my political philosophy, my business philosophy is really simple. Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. We don't aggress against others and we don't steal. And that frames up every single decisions that I make in my personal life and in my business.
All right.
And
So how did that come about though, Jason? I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, it's okay.
How did that mindset, you talk about libertarian and free market. How did that even come about?
Yeah, I was working overseas you're in the military. You kind of drink some Kool-Aid that every time we go and fight, we're defending freedom and democracy, and we're spreading love and roses around the world. And I was in the Marine Corps, and I was part of a special operations team, and I really deeply believed in the I guess in the personal decision to defend liberty and freedom. That's why I joined, is I wanted to be one of those guys. And when I got out of the military and I went to work for a contracting company doing high threat security for the State Department, I quickly realized that that's not what we were doing over there. That we weren't spreading freedom and liberty, and that most people didn't like us and they didn't want us there. And I started looking at what the State Department was doing, and I realized, this is really just a gigantic slush fund where we move money from U.S. taxpayers to some other entity, and they lose it all. They don't know where it's going, and it really frustrated me. And about that same time, I was looking for an exit out of the contracting business, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I had decided that I wanted to work in finance some way. And so I was studying everything I could on finance, on international banking, on central banking, on how governments affect prices of stocks and things like that. And one of the books I ended up running across was a book by Ron Paul called The Manifesto. And I will admit that up until that point, I thought Ron was a crazy old man. That's very much how he's portrayed. And honestly, that's kind of how he comes off. High squeaky voice. He's like 70 years old. And I thought he was kind of a freak show. But I read his book, and I realized after reading it that Ron was saying in that book everything that I felt, but I didn't know how to articulate. And of course, Ron is a staunch libertarian in his political philosophy. And so that kind of set me on this path. And then I read another book many years later from my good friend, Matt Kibbe, that is actually titled Don't Hurt People and Don't Take Their Stuff. And that to me encapsulated so much of what I believed as a person that I just started using it. And that's what I tell people all the time, is that that's the way I view the world. And so that's everything that I do kind of guides that. And it's how I judge morality. It's how I judge, relationships, all of those things.
So let me ask you this. And I want to backtrack 1 second before we go forward. Your show, Wealth, Power, and Influence, and you said most people hear that and they say, oh, that's not for me. Why do you think that is?
I think it is because for most of us, we have been brought up to believe our views on money and power are typically framed negatively. If you look at the vast majority of the shows on TV dealing with the wealthy and the powerful, they are all typically evil people. It's always the hero who is battling against these wealthy elites who seek to, limit his power, limit his freedoms, or destroy his livelihood, right? This is the way we typically frame up these folks. And the fact is, a lot of them are that way. Places of great power and control tend to attract people who want to control you. Right. And so this becomes somewhat of a self-fulfilling philosophy. And so I've always been of the opinion that I'm a good person. I live my life well. I'm honorable and ethical. I should want to be powerful. I should want to be wealthy and have massive influence because I feel like I can, at the very least, be a buffer or a combat to those other people. And maybe at best, I can help some other people change their lives. And so I think the reason people view this so negatively is the way it's been framed up. I mean, you can view money in two different ways. You can view it as the root of all evil, or you can view it as a tool that's used to provide you the liberty and the freedom that you desire. It's complete. It's both are correct. It depends on how you want to look at it. It can either be the root of all evil or the greatest opportunity that you've ever had.
Well, I do think sometimes we want to slink back into the shadows. We want to say, look, I don't want to be a part of that group that is out there being corrupt, because like you said, sometimes the term is synonymous, power and corruption, right? And we see right now, as we're in the midstream of election, on one side, you've got a billionaire. On the other side, now you have a new billionaire entering the race. And you start to think, oh, wait a second, there's no win for me. But if we are that moral and good and ethical person, if we do have the values that we would want our country to be run by, but yet we're stepping back, we're slinking back into the shadows, and we're not being the one that is creating a voice, then that maybe that voice is then now void out there. We don't have that space. So I agree with everything you're saying there. And to be really because we don't generally get into politics a ton on our show, but I think it's important as we are creating wealth for ourselves. That means we probably will create power. We definitely will have influence. And even if it's just influence in our families as to how things are done, Joey and I, our family's homeschooled. So we're constantly teaching our children. And when I say us, that's really a loose term. Our wives are very much in that. But we get involved in the economic conversations a lot in the household, and how we handle money is important. Money is one of those things that most people don't understand, and they tend to delegate it to someone else.
So advocate is more the word.
I want to talk a little bit about that. So you mentioned for a little bit of time, you ran a currency trading company. He did that for a little bit, but then you came to a point in time where you said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to switch gears and I want to move more into a different area. Talk about what area that was and why you did that.
Yeah, so my education company, I was relatively successful at that very early on because I was able to build a brand in a very difficult niche, which is, there is nothing older, very few occupations older than the guy selling investment advice. And so when I got into that and I wanted to kind of coach and teach currency traders what I knew I was stepping into one of the most overly saturated and least respected industries on the planet. And I positioned myself in a way that helped to defeat that and overcome that. And over the course of several years, built a very large following online and a very lucrative business. But after about 3 or 4 years of teaching trading, I got really tired of it. Trading, when it's done right and done well, is very repetitive and very boring. And so when you're doing that 3 hours, 4 hours a day, teaching exactly the same thing, exactly the same way, I just got burned out from doing it. And so I turned that over to other people in the company, and I started working on understanding, really truly understanding how to brand and market yourself. I'd kind of fallen into it. I think I have somewhat of a natural inclination for it. And so I started really honing that, whatever gift I had, into a skill. And I got really, really good at it. And so as the company started to grow and was doing well, I switched and started a podcast to talk about politics and economics, because largely one of my beliefs is that what the best thing that you can do for yourself, for your family, and for your future is to control the source of your income. Now, what does that mean? That means I don't have to be reliant upon anybody else for my livelihood. It's a form of entrepreneurship. Now, you don't have to be an entrepreneur. There are other ways you can do it. So if you're going to work for somebody else, one of the ways that you can ensure your longevity inside the company is to make sure that there are always a lot of people who want to hire you. And how do you do that? You do it by being the best guy in the room for the job, the best guy available for the job. And so what I focused on in that podcast was talking with people about how central banks affect prices, how governments affect your ability to grow your wealth and to become independent and free. And over time, that podcast again grew to be really, really successful. And I feel like I'm tooting my own horn here, but whatever. We were doing about 30,000, 35,000 downloads a day, to give you an idea of just that. That puts us in like the top 1/2% of all podcasts on the internet.
Yeah, you can toot away on that, Jason. We're at least a few thousand behind you on that.
But you're climbing. You're climbing. And then I realized that my real passion was teaching the kind of stuff that I was doing, but that I wasn't in the business of teaching. So, for example, you guys, one of the ways we linked up was because of a product called Podcaster's Paradise, which I ended up taking when I wanted to do podcasting. It's one of the things I do, is that when I want to learn something new, I go and find somebody who's successful at it, and I pay that guy to teach me how to do it, because I want to learn it now. I don't want old information from a college course or something. So I went and bought that. And when I got done with it, I put together some video training and I sent it to them and said, I think this will help your audience. And to their great credit, they actually put it up on their website, and it's part of the training regiment that they have there now. And I talk a lot about how do you influence, how do you build tribe, and how do you get people coming back every single day. And I love talking about that stuff. I love teaching that stuff. And it's something that I am better qualified to speak on than virtually anyone else who teaches it today, because I've done it in 3 different verticals in the last 10 years, all of them wildly successful brands, all of them in completely different industries. And so that's what I spend my time doing now. I just kind of follow my passion, and it combines everything that I believe in. It combines my political philosophy, if you want to point to that, my business philosophy, my passion, and my skill set, all tied up into one. It couldn't be a more perfect business for me to be in.
All right. So I'm listening to you and I'm saying, man, I want that. Like, I want to be the most important person in the room if I am an employee of a company. So that way people will always have a role for me, right? We're not paid by the time in the day, but the value we bring to the day, right? And I think about that. How do I create more value? So you've talked about that you're the most qualified person to teach on building that value. Is there one thing that you could say, here's the one thing that you work on to help be that person? What is that one thing?
The number one thing that you can do right now, if you're trying to make yourself invaluable to your owner, or sorry, to your boss, is to constantly increase your human capital. Start working on your skill set. What are you learning today that makes you more valuable than yesterday? Most people stop learning and they just start doing, and then they work their job, they punch their clock, and then they go home. One thing that is certain in life is that we are in a constant state of change, always changing. Everything is changing. And you can either accept that and roll with the punches, or you can get angry about it and refuse to change and refuse to adjust. If you choose the latter, you're going to be broke, and you're largely going to be you're going to be at the bottom of the pay scale of wherever you work. If you choose to invest your time, effort, and energy in building your human capital, you're going to find yourself always in high demand and always being paid the maximum possible for the work that you do.
Joey, I mean, how many times have we said on this podcast that the absolute first place you ought to invest is where?
Yourself.
Yeah, every single time.
You are your best investment.
Can you get a better rate of return with more control than investing in yourself?
Not a chance.
No, I mean, exactly what you're saying, Jason, is that, yes, you have to take time. You have to invest in yourself. That is going to be that way that people, you said it before, I think, that people buy you, right? Well, what are they buying? Are they buying someone who is creating value and is constantly learning? Or are they buying someone who's staying stagnant while everybody else is passing them, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. They at the end of the day, they buy you. Your employer buys you. Your clients or customers buy you. That's what they're buying, a trust and a relationship with you. Because the fact is, and this is the dirty little secret about how all of us work, is that all of us secretly just want somebody else to make the decision. We just want somebody else to be able to put our faith in and say, I don't need to think about this because Jimmy's got it. I know Jimmy. I trust Jimmy. Jimmy's going to do the right thing. And so I don't want to have to worry about this anymore. I'm going to let him handle it. And we need to be, as individuals, we need to be that to as many people as possible. And the more people that rely on us that way, the more influence and the more wealth and the more power we will amass.
So let's take this back. Everybody who's listening right now, they're saying, okay, this sounds awesome. This sounds amazing. I need to be taking inventory of what I have to offer and where I'm lacking. And what would you say are some resources that they could go to that would say, man, this is the next step. This is how I can start on this journey. It's not an easy journey, by the way.
Because Joey, I mean, do you want me to kind of tell you where you're deficient? Is that what you're asking?
Well, no, we could do that offline.
Okay.
You do that quite frequently, actually.
All right, we'll let you answer
if you
that,
don't
Jason.
have a Russ.
Yeah, if you don't have somebody like me who's willing to critique his business partner on a daily basis on everything from conversation to clothing, what do you do, Jason? How do you fix those areas?
Well, the first question I would ask somebody when they come to me with a question like that is I would say, are you happy with what you're doing now? Because if there's a dude who's out there and he's just happier than a pig in mud, rolling around outside, laying asphalt, then the last thing I'd want to do is try and convince him he needs to go do something else. There are right. guys who all they really want to do is go fishing all day.
Sure.
And that's a perfect world for them. And if they're working as a day laborer or they're working as an accountant and what they really want to be doing is fishing all day, well, now I say, well, how do we put you into a position where you can fish all day? There's lots of stuff you can do, especially in the 21st century. You know how many people there are who would love to fish all day, who love to watch people fish all day, who love to know about all the latest fishing stuff that's happening and what's going on. That's a really easy business to start, especially while you're working at your accounting firm. And then we start transferring that income from what you're doing now to what you really want to be doing. And so for me, it's first about defining what do you want to do with your life? Because most people are where they are today by accident. They weren't deliberate about it. They didn't decide, oh, you know what I really want. Nobody woke up when they were 10 years old and said, man, I am absolutely dying to be a middle manager at a regional paper company, right? Nobody says that. Nobody.
I don't know. Michael Scott may have done that. I would not put it past him.
Right. And so you watch shows like The Office and you just like, dude, nobody wanted to grow up to be a paper salesman. Right. So what did you want to grow up to be? What are you passionate about? What does get you going and doesn't feel like work? Right. I know a lot of people will tell you just go where the money is and don't worry about following your passion or anything like that. I don't know why you have to choose. I've never found something I was passionate about that I couldn't make a fortune doing. And so it's just about redefining what that is. And so doing a little introspection and being honest with yourself is the first step in moving yourself closer towards the life you really want.
All right. So what's the second step?
Second step would then be to define how you move there. So let's say, for example, that you decide that you wanted to fish all day, and then you start making a list of all the people who are making money fishing all day. What's it a combination of? Is it a combination of you got to go to the fishing tournaments? Is it that you got to have a little fishing show on a YouTube channel? Is it that you got to get some partnerships so that you can sell equipment and gear? There's lots of different ways that you can do it that will keep you out on the lake or out on the river all day, every day, and also give you the ability to make a lot of money doing it. So the second thing is to figure out where the money's being made in that industry. All right, and once you figure out where the money's being made, then you figure out how to carve out yourself a little piece of it.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is that step 3 is kind of figuring out that next step? How do I actually start getting it?
Yeah. So once you figure out how's everybody else doing it, there's no need to reinvent the wheel when you're first starting out. Just look at what everybody else is doing and say, oh yeah, they're making pretty good money doing that. I bet I could do that. I bet I could do that as well as they're doing it. And then you start putting something together, and it's going to be small at first and it's going to suck. That's what people don't understand is that when you get started with something, you suck at it at first. It's not supposed to be easy or come naturally to you, right? It's something new. You work at it and you move yourself, keeping in mind that the ultimate goal is your freedom, not just your financial freedom, but your life freedom. You're not. What good is being a multimillionaire if you're shackled to your desk 12 hours a day doing stuff that you hate? That's no life.
100%.
I thought about that today, Joey. Walking into the gym, I was thinking about some of the people that, I get to work out, Jason, with some amazing people. These guys are super successful, all different walks of life, different areas in business where some people are actually on the retired area. Some of them are just into it. And these guys live amazing lives every single day. I just love talking with them, spending time with them. And I thought about, man, how many of these guys that I get to work out with on a daily basis make millions of dollars? And I started thinking, here in the South, college football is huge. Right now, we're kind of at that point at the end of the year. Everybody's talking about playoffs. You're talking about, I'm thinking about these coaches that are on a hot seat. And, hey, there's people out there that are making $500,000 to $5 million a year. Well, I'm working out with people that make that kind of money. The difference is exactly what you just said. Those guys are making, 1.5 million, $3 million a year as a football coach. How much of a life do they live? They are literally saddled.
They're owned
12, 14-hour days every day. It doesn't end. It constantly starts. It's like the Santa in Elf, whenever, he gets back on Christmas Eve from delivering the presents and he's like, now it's time to start working on next year. And elves go back to work. It's like, that's not what success looks like for me. I don't want that. So success is what you just said, is freedom. It's not just the money. It's creating a passion, creating money. And when we create value, money comes with, boy, let's get freedom and time to come with it.
Well, and let me add this to what Jason was just saying as well. We did not tell you any of this stuff before we started talking. True?
Shocking.
What?
I said shocking. We didn't tell him something before.
We did not plan any of this. This is all what you're saying, but it lines up exactly with what we talk about on the show. There's 3 steps. Take control, pick your own path. And the last thing I would say is get there faster. Now, you've already mentioned borrow what other people have already done. To me, that's a hack. That's like what you said. I'm willing to pay somebody who's an expert in whatever it is that I want to learn instead of the DIY model that might take me forever to understand something. I'm going to pay now so I can learn it today. That's a hack. Was there anything else that you would say that somebody who's listening, they say, man, I want this. I've put it off for far too long. And I want the freedom that you're talking about. I'm going to start what you're talking about, but are there any other ways that I can hack this, that I can shortchange this thing and make it as fast as possible? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, it's a really good question. One of the things that you have to understand, the way I view money and success in general is I look at everything as buying time. So my time is a non-renewable, non-refundable, non-replenishable resource, right? It's the only one that we don't make more of.
100%.
I can always make more money. Money's actually really easy to make. So what I can't make is more time. And so everything that I do is built around buying time. So for example, as you said, one of the hacks you can do is to go buy somebody else's experience, right? Well, our framing of reality, the way we see the world is really framed up by 2 things: your experiences and your education. Okay. Well, if I can go buy somebody else's experiences through education, then I want to do that, because I'm going to learn what he spent 15, 20 years learning, and I'm going to learn all the most valuable pieces of that so I can then apply it to what I'm doing. And if I apply it in the right area and with the right amount of intensity, I'm going to do really well. The other thing that I always focus on is I have chosen to temporarily delay to live an uncomfortable life for a period of time so that I can live a very good life after that. So what I mean by that is I always tell people I got rich between 10 and 2. So I would work regular job, then at 10 p.m., kids are in bed, everybody's asleep, it's quiet. I start working on the other stuff. I worked relentlessly. And when I say work, I don't look at work the way other people do. I put a video out the other day. I was having a conversation with my friend Matt Gibby, and I just said, "What is work?" I mean, I'm not roofing a house in Georgia in July. I'm not laying asphalt in Louisiana. It's like I'm not doing those things. I'm sitting at a desk. I crank out 12, 14 hours a day to get that business going. And I still work a lot, but I love what I do. So I get up in the morning. I got up at 6 o'clock this morning and I started working on some stuff that we've got to get done here. And I loved it. I bounced out of bed this morning. I know some people are listening to this and are going, oh, whatever, dude. Nobody bounces out of bed to go to work. I got up today at 5:45, and by 5:55, I had a cup of coffee. I was sitting in front of my computer and I was working. And I love it. We're going to get done here. I'm going to record a sales video. I'm going to put it out, and then I'm going to watch the money roll in this afternoon. That's going to be the joy, is having my phone off of vibrate and listening to the ding, 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 ding from my Stripe account as the money rolls in. That's what I love doing. I love that experience. Okay. And so I get to do what I love to do, and I work really hard at it. So control the source of your income. Be a brand, not a commodity, right? Make yourself a brand, not a commodity. And number three, do what others are unwilling to do. That's the difference. Most people are not willing to do what it takes to achieve the life that they really want. That's why they stay in mediocrity. Figure out what it costs to get what you want and then pay the price. Otherwise, live a less than life. Don't complain. Don't look to others and say, well, I wish I had what he had. Oh, it must be nice to be where you're at. Yeah, it is nice. You know what? Took a lot of work to get here. Took a lot of risk to get here. So yeah, it is really nice to be where I am. It's really nice to look out my window at West Hollywood, across from the Staples Center, in my 2,000 square foot apartment, in downtown Los Angeles, living a life other people would envy, right? That's great. That's my dream. That's my life. Okay. Other people would have a different dream, but don't look at what I got. Don't look at what somebody else has achieved and say, oh, it must be nice, because you got no idea what it took to get there. And that's why you're where you're at. So if you want your life to change, you got to do something different. You got to make different choices. And it starts with deciding what you want that life to look like.
Man, got to know what you want before you can get there. You got to envision it. You got to put it out in front of you on a daily basis. You got to not be so proud to think that you already have all the answers, so that way that you're willing to listen, because as Tony Robbins said in a famous quote that you basically alluded to earlier, success leaves clues.
Absolutely.
We need to go follow what those people have done and emulate as much of it as possible, make it ours. Man, Jason, this has been awesome. We're excited to have you in the community. Someone wants to reach out to you. They're going to be able to get access to you in there. But between now and whenever this and the opportunity for them to reach out to you in the community, where else could they find Jason Stapleton?
You go to jasonstapleton.com. I'm on Facebook, Jason Stapleton fan. You can go check that out and join the fan page, and then the podcast Wealth, Power, and Influence. So and actually, if the easiest way to get there is to go to jasonstapleton.com/connect, because literally every place that you could possibly connect with me is there. jasonstapleton.com/connect.
Oh man, that's awesome. Jason, you mentioned it in our interview that time is that resource we can't get back, we can't ever replace. And so we're very grateful that you chose to spend that time with us and with our audience and with our community now going forward. And so, man, just want to thank you again for being here, and look forward to connecting with you on the inside.
Oh, me too. Thanks so much for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
If you've been listening to our podcast, you're like, man, I love what you guys are talking about. I want to build passive income through one of these 5 pillars that you're talking about, but how do I do it? Stallion, tell them it is so easy.
It's so easy that we created the longest URL possible. So you may want to write this down: freecall.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com. Go to freecall.wealthwithoutwallstreet.com, and you can set up your call with one of us. We're excited to talk to you.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.